Well, hello again, everybody. Welcome back to the Huddle, the Review.com's weekly high school sports show. I'm Executive Editor Rob Todor of the Alliance Review, joined as always by Sports Editor Mike Brown. And we're in week 3 of the high school football playoffs, Mike, and the Western Reserve Blue Devils are standing strong.
Right. As we predicted when the season started 12 weeks ago, Rob, we thought this would be the last team standing. Once again, it is the last team standing.
Now, Western Reserve with an impressive defensive performance, I thought, last week in their victory. Talk a little bit about that and how that's going to have to translate to this week against a very good Norwalk St. Paul team.
Yeah, right. Last week in their 42-21 win over Lucas, they pretty much doubled the offense. Western Reserve had 425 yards and Lucas had 219, so that tells me they won the battle at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. But they're going to have a tiger by the tail this weekend, Rob, in Norwalk St. Paul.
Keys always is turnovers and eliminating penalties and mistakes. Right. But, I mean, for Western Reserve with the success they've had and a win last year over this same team,
right.
So where do you see the advantage for the Blue Devils?
Well, I think that has to help the fact that they defeated them last year, but I think this Norwalk St. Paul team is pretty awesome this year. When you run the numbers on this team, they're averaging 46 points a game. They're giving up less than 10 points a game, and they've just been blowing out teams. Their one loss was to Huron. And Huron barely lost to Clyde, and Clyde is advancing in the Division III playoffs, a quality program there, and they barely lost to Huron. That was their only loss. So I mean, Western Reserve's had some really good performances lately. Though last week John Clegg rushed for 3 touchdowns. Rob had 98 yards rushing. Joe Falaska had a big game, threw a touchdown pass. Brian Sunderman, the receiver, had 5 receptions for 139 yards. So they're going to have to bring that kind of performance again, I think. To have a shot to knock this team off this year.
Yeah, I think the balance for Western Reserve, being able to run and throw, is going to definitely help their cause there. So, a couple other games that kind of caught my attention in Division III, Hubbard and Akron St. Vincent St. Mary. St. V, the defending state champs, but Hubbard with Division I players all over the place.
Yep.
L.J. Scott, a Michigan State recruit, for instance, at running back. So that should be a good game at Ravenna.
It sure should. When you look at Hubbard, my goodness, like a D1 college team, they've got 2 Division I running backs on the same team. That is unheard of. That's at that level, especially at the Division III level. But St. V, they have that great history in all sports. So that should be a dandy, like you said.
The other one I was looking at was it's going to be played at Lake High School on Saturday, and that's Kent Central Catholic, who's just been rolling people, and against Youngstown Ursuline, a team that's got 4 losses, but there they are again in the regional finals.
Right, I really like Central this year. This team has been so consistent. They really haven't had any blips on the radar. They've been consistent every week, and they're doing that with a roster of less than 40 players, which is amazing when you think about it. You can go through a season, usually have injuries, and if you start with less than 4 and you have injuries, that really can affect you, but they have withstood that, and they've just been a quality team all the way through.
Yeah, and you mentioned that because I think it was last year, it was Low Klinefelter's last season, and they just had a ton of injuries. Right. They were down to their 3rd-string quarterback, came into Mount Union Stadium and beat Alliance, if I recall correctly, and so I guess it's kind of, everything evens out in the end, and all the injuries that they had last year, they've been very healthy so far this year.
They really have. Central has 2 state championships in their past, so, like the Irish, they've been there and done that before, so that should be a great game.
That should be an excellent game. One off the field now, we've got some issues in the Northeastern Buckeye Conference, a lot of rumors going around. If everything, all the rumors panned out, none of these schools would exist anymore, I think. So,
right.
But a lot of rumors going around dealing with the Northeastern Buckeye Conference, Louisville's domination, and obviously there's nothing wrong with that. They have a great program, and Louisville, the most successful program in the NBC in football throughout its 25-year history. But a lot of rumors going around. Where does that stand, Mike, right now, to the best of your knowledge, and where is it going to go from here?
Well, I'm not sure where it's going to go because they've got me guessing now too. But they've been meeting for 3 months, and they've had some really good conversations. The hope was, they wanted to keep all current 8 members in the league, and the way to address that is they were hoping to go to a 2-tiered format where Louisville would be in the large tier, and they'd have some current schools in the small tier, and some of the current members would also go in the large tier. Well, from what we're hearing, that most of the schools want to be in the small tier, the current members, and that won't work. There's just not enough schools to fill the large tier. So, that's the problem right now, and I don't know how they're going to get past that, because There have been some talks that some schools would break off and form a new league, but there's not enough schools, I don't think, to do that either. So I think at the end of the day, unless something major happens, these 8 schools are still going to be in this league unless, I just don't know how you get around that right now, because the 2-tiered, obviously it looks like it's failed, which is a shame because I thought that would be ideal. I really did. And some other schools were going to come in from Tuscarawas County, a few from Stark County, possibly one from Wayne County was going to come in. But if you don't have enough schools to fill the large tier, everything's off the table. So, they have us guessing right now. My guess is as good as anybody's out there right now. And I've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes on this. And where it's going to go, we'll find out, I guess, if anywhere. It may just be the status quo. It may be that all 8 of these schools have to come back to the league and just work through these issues until something else down the road opens up.
Yeah, I think a couple points I'd like to make. One, I don't think there's any problem with Louisville winning, but I think there's a issue that in the last 15 or 20 years, all the NBC schools have lost enrollment,
right?
And Louisville's gained,
right?
And Louisville's gone from I think the 3rd biggest school in the league to now the biggest by far.
Absolutely.
And when you've got there, and Marlington being the 2nd biggest school has 90 fewer boys for the OHSAA counting purposes. That's in grades 9 through 11, I believe, over a 2-year period. So when you get that big of a difference, that's going to show up in your depth and then how many kids you have playing both offense and defense, and that takes its toll over time. So I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at that, and I think the schools that are unsatisfied, maybe that's too harsh of a word, but just exploring the possibilities. I don't think there's an issue with Louisville per se. They're definitely a great member of the league and been a charter member of the league.
Absolutely.
But I think demographics as demographics have changed. Obviously, the competition on the field has changed along with that too. The other point I want to make too is if you look towards the east in the All-American Conference in Youngstown. Has been just a series of schools either wanting to get out or threatening to leave since they went to the tiers. That's probably been about 7 or 8 years ago. That's been in a constant state of flux. The ITCL, by comparison, even though they really haven't changed, but they've had some changes, and next year they're going to 3 tiers, that's been in a lot of change. So I think, a tier system is great, but it's proven, in my experience, to be very difficult to put together. It's a great theory, but in reality, you've got a lot. Now you're going from 8 to 16 schools that you got to try to satisfy everybody's interest, and so that makes it really difficult. So I don't know what the answer is. The NBC has been so stable. 25 years, there's been just 3 changes. So it's anybody's guess, like you said, what's going to happen. But I think probably by the spring, I think we're probably going to have a better idea because, in my opinion, I think one school is probably going to leave or by the spring meeting. So that's just my opinion. Take it for what it's worth. So, but it's definitely an interesting situation. It has definitely piqued the interest on the message boards, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So, well, anyway, back to the good news. The Western Reserve Blue Devils, best of luck to them on Saturday night against Norwalk St. Paul. So for Mike Brown, this is Rob Todor. We'll talk to you next week.